Well, I'm an idiot, and the worst part is, I don't even know how. When eXtremeRate first contacted me about the sponsored product deal, I was happy. I have not personally heard of the company before, but we have all seen their sick, fantastic color lineup for the Steam Deck. But the contact from eXtremeRate had mentioned their atomic color, or atomic purple color, and I was also intrigued by their chameleon color, because that one looked pretty cool on pretty much anything. Even taking a look through all of their other products, though, their designs seem pretty solid. If you're in for customizing your Steam Deck, Switch, or controllers, they are the go-to company, it seems. My package arrived a few days later. However, as I had other content and sponsor pieces to get to, I put it on the back burner. Before getting to this kit, I have not really seen too much in the way of taking apart the Steam Deck fully. I have taken it apart before to swap my fan, SSD, and change out the thermal paste. So I was already somewhat comfortable with taking apart the Steam Deck, as well having lived my whole life taking apart electronics for fun and putting them back together in working order. This should be an advanced, but relatively easy process to do. Over the week of me having the case, I was watching other content creators' videos. The one point of mutual hatred seemed to be stemming from the removal of the screen from the Steam Deck. Now, this was due to the apparent low-quality tools included with the kit, mainly the suction cup for lifting and removing the screen. Although noting that many other people online were using their secondary or tertiary deck, and others saying they would not want to risk either of their decks on this mod, not coming from such a place of privilege as being a new YouTuber, I unfortunately have one deck and cannot afford another one outright at this moment, so I was in it just as much as any other regular user would be. When I finally sat down to do this for myself, I could agree with most others that the suction cup is a little lacking. My main fear going into it was that the metal ring would rip through the rubber of the suction cup, although it never did. When it came to everything else though, the tools seemed basic, but were definitely more than usable for the task. One thing I will note about their instructional video was that they kept referencing using tweezers. My kit didn't come with any tweezers, but it did seem to imply that they came in it with the videos, so I'm not sure. So if you do have not so dainty fingers, or even if you do, consider picking up a pair of tweezers beforehand if you don't. As well, ensure you have plenty of working space. My method was just take off one part at a time and then keep all the screws and hardware piled in that little pile there. And then just as I was able to kind of go back and forth, and I didn't miss any screws, I didn't end up losing anything. They do seem to include a lot of replacement screws, and it does seem like there is enough for a one-for-one replacement of each screw. However, I just reused mine. But if you do end up losing them or whatever, you've got plenty to spare. Getting into the teardown process, honestly, it's not too bad at all. Especially if you're following eXtremeRate's very well documented video. To get to the point of taking out the screen, it took me just under an hour. And this was due to me just following along step by step with the video. There was nothing really too weird about this part of the process. Just be prepared to remove and reinsert ribbon cables. If you've never done them before, it's not too bad. You just have to line it up and slide it in. You'll feel a little bit of a tactile kind of click as it slots into place. To double check that it is inserted fully, the little white line should be covered or just covered by the ribbon clip cable when you put it back down, either the black or white, depending on which one. As well, some of the coloring of the rubber and plastics, they were a bit off, but there was nothing major that left me needing to contact support. There is one step though where it will tell you to remove the heat pipe, which is the copper piece, the little copper rod bending coming up towards the fan. It'll tell you to take that off, so there's two screws that you need to remove, and then you can separate that from the main board. I would recommend not doing that, just because if you don't have any thermal paste laying around, or if you don't even know what thermal paste is, in their video it seems to imply that you just put it right back on. That's a major no-no. That can and will likely affect your temperatures. So I suggest either repasting it at this time because you're taking it apart anyway, get some better thermal paste, maybe you'll drop some temperatures, but it's just good to do if you haven't done it before and you've had it since launch. Once I got to the screen removal part, I had only used my hairdryer on low heat, as I figured that would be what most people would have and use in their teardown. Not using a heat gun or anything like that. And honestly, if you have seen videos of other people hyping it up to be this big monumental task, don't sweat it too much. I was able to get the screen off in under 30 minutes with the tools provided. I have seen some videos of people whipping out big industrial use suction cups to remove the screen. It is not that hard. If you pay attention to the video and follow their instructions exactly, use the metal pick provided to slice the glue along the edges of the screen and you'll have no issues. Be careful about inserting it too far, as you can mess up the ambient sensor and other components. The main point that you can mess up is the black bezel around the screen. If you scratch this, light will show through the black. However, if you have a black marker, you can just draw over these spots, and I did scratch mine once, but once I did, I realized the angle I was going in at was a bit too steep. So my advice for this part is just take it slow. Heat up the glue 5 to 10 minutes, and then introduce the suction cup. Start at one corner and work your pick in slowly here. If the screen is not lifting at all, do not try to wrench on it. Heat it up a little bit more and then go from there. Work your way around the edges of the screen slowly. Using the pick to slice the glue, eventually you will feel the screen give a little more. Reposition your suction cup as needed if you're working from whatever corner, and then after some prying you should be able to have it off in no time. After getting the screen off, the only other pain point for me was the small little tiny screws holding the frame to the case. You'll see it in the video in the step process, but these were the only screws that you needed the smaller screwdriver included with that kit. Every other screw is the same head. You can use the same screwdriver for it. Putting everything back together, at least in my mind, was going fairly well. Putting the antenna cables back on for the Wi-Fi card was a little bit of an annoyance, as in the video it seemed like the prongs clipped on, but they never really seemed to in my case. So what I ended up doing was just mashing them on as best as I could, and then as if I was Indiana Jones stealing the loot, I had to quickly remove and replace my finger that was holding the cables on with the RF shield that holds them in place. Once you get the SSD back in, things just seem to speed up exponentially from there. At least for me, everything just kind of flew back together at that point. Note, I was not racing or being careless during all this. I was taking breaks and coming back to it, and I wasn't trying to do it all in one shot. I just found all the annoying stuff to be before and after the removal of the SSD, like when you remove and replace it. So once you get to the point of taking out the SSD in the teardown, that's when it becomes a bit of an annoyance, and then when you put the SSD back in, then it's like, oh, okay, everything's all good now. After a quick break from my therapy appointment, surprisingly unrelated to all of this, I sat back down and went into the last mile putting in the trackpads, joystick, and triggers. All my ribbon cables seemed to go in no problem, and as I was in the final stretch of putting on the plastics into the back piece, I was getting a little bit more giddy as it was looking really good. However, for one last final screw you in the rebuilding process, the left trigger assembly, base, and support stand had broken. This did not allow the trigger to flow freely in its housing, and it was rubbing along the back plate when it was closed. So after some convincing, I was able to get that sorted out and closed off the deck, working triggers and all. However, when I turned on the deck, there was no reaction from the screen. No backlight or image. I gave it 10 minutes, but after hearing and feeling that the controls were working in the Steam menu, I figured it was the display that was the issue. I took the deck back apart once again and found thankfully that my display ribbon cable had just come loose. I put the deck back together for a second time and fired it up. This time though I was met with the backlight but no image. So I decided to clear my CMOS, done by holding the quick access menu button, volume down, and power well off. This however did not fix the issue, and at this point I emailed my contact and let them know that things were not going so hot. After taking apart the Steam Deck and putting it back together over several times now, checking and rechecking to make sure each cable, ribbon, and screw was done just right, I took it apart fully twice, and the rest I took it apart just until the screen removal. There's nothing I can find that could be the issue. My only other thought was that my dog's hair was getting in somewhere that was causing issues. She is a husky, so it does get everywhere. Taking it apart fully one final time, I used compressed air to make sure there was no hair anywhere, and that it was as clean as a whistle. However, every time I booted up, I met with the same backlight, no image screen. Everything else has been confirmed to be working, so the only thing that I can think of is that either A, the ribbon cable is damaged in some way, or B, the screen potentially died from heat, or C, the screen was damaged from me physically removing it. However, the last scenario doesn't seem too likely as I didn't rip it off like a Neanderthal. All in all, not everything is lost. I can still dock my Steam Deck and get an image out that way. Games work fine, temperatures seem to be the same with no major deviations. Well, what are my options? At this point, I guess I've got myself the N64 I never had. Although purple was never an N64 color for the see-through, just the controller. But I've got myself a fantastic Steam Deck that can only be enjoyed while docked. So option 1, buy a whole new Steam Deck, now being the time as they are currently on sale for the second time ever. But again, I don't have the immediate leisure funds to spend on a new deck. Option 2, leave it as is and use it only as a docked experience. This in my opinion is useless because 720p just looks straight up bad on 4K, 1080p is a little bit better, but the deck will not run games I want at 1080p, so it would never likely get used. Option 3 would be to bite the bullet and buy the replacement screen. However, me being cheap, I do not want to buy the full kit from iFixit as the part only is out of stock right now. Maybe from all these shell mods. This is not to be a guaranteed fix though, although highly likely. Option 4, throw it out the window and become an ROG Ally content creator only, which I think nobody really wants. I do like the variety of the channel. And there you have it, my dumb mistake, documented. Again, I don't know where I went wrong, however just take my tale as a cautionary one. When and if you set out to do this on your own, give yourself a day to do it. Make sure you have nothing planned so you can just take it at a leisurely pace. That will be key to a successful result. If you feel yourself getting frustrated at something, don't be afraid to put it down and come back to it after a break. Go for a walk or make something to eat. You'll be more upset with yourself if you end up breaking something out of frustration. If you want to do this project, just know that there are inherent risks to it, such as my case. I'm not saying that if you do this mod, this will happen, nor am I saying it can't happen, and I'm not putting any blame on eXtremeRate here either. It's not their fault due to user error. I place all the blame on myself. Perhaps there was one spot I wasn't careful enough, or I ripped out a ribbon cable a little bit too hard. Who knows? All I know is I'm left feeling a little defeated, obviously. However, that hasn't turned me off of their product at all. The quality material and instruction set are fantastic. The plastics of the eXtremeRate case hold up very well to the Steam Deck, with the eXtremeRate case being a little bit more smooth compared to the textured feel of the Steam Deck. Same goes for the touchpad, so if you are doing this, I would recommend taking the time to mimic using them both with the OEM and eXtremeRate, as I'm sure some people will prefer the textured feel over the smooth. There aren't too many cons to the product, with a price point of $35 US and $45 Canadian. The included tools and everything all together, I think the price is pretty fair. One thing that I could say could be a little bit better would be that the suction cup provided, it would have been nice if it was molded a ring to it instead of a little metal loop through ring. I think that would have provided better action and you were able to use the suction cup a little bit easier. But they also do provide matching D-pad and buttons, which I've seen other kits don't, so you just end up using the stock like Steam Deck D-pad and buttons, so that's nice too that they include the matching buttons. But my deck content might be a little lacking until I do get a replacement screen. All my precious earned pennies from AdSense will now be directly diverted to getting either my deck back in working order, or if that isn't the fix, save up all the shillings and get myself a big time YouTuber's second deck. Either way, I did have some more in-depth content planned and more Steam Deck specific stuff, but being limited to using it with just a screen at this moment is really killing any motivation. So same goes for AdSense revenue. I had intended to get other gear, latency testing stuff, thermal camera, and other cool gadgets. However, that will all be put on pause and the Steam Deck will take precedence now until I can get that back in working order, so I can continue to make more in-depth optimization guides and comparisons with the Ally. My next series was going to be more emulation duels. But that'll do it for this one. If you liked the video, whatever, I guess you liked it. If not, well, whatever. If you want to leave a comment saying, haha, idiot, you broke your Steam Deck, then all the power to you. For everyone else, have a great day.